Welcome to BlackUSA.news morning show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations, all my people out there in internet land. This is the BlackUSA.news morning show, and I have the privilege and honor of serving as your host. I am William Honolulu Jr. Let's get it started. As always, big shout out and thank you to Crazy Horse Morgan, the super producer, the man who keeps us all headed in the right direction and keeping it popping. So thank you again, sir. See what else. We had a conversation this morning on Donnie's show, a special edition. Now y'all are lucky. Donnie is out here doing these special editions, bringing you all amazing guests. And he was able to really have a deep conversation about innovations and things in STEM and stuff like that, and even gave a little musical serenade in there. So if you didn't catch that, his show this morning, the special edition, you really do need to. Yesterday was our very first Mental Health Monday. And we had a wonderful time, not necessarily because of the topic, because we handled grief and grieving, but we had a wonderful time because we got an opportunity to talk about something real and meaningful in a way that's effective for African Americans. One of the things we talked about was the need to get professionals to be involved in your mental health journey. When you are grieving, sometimes you need to talk to somebody who doesn't know you, who isn't weighing things from other relationships, or, like I joke about my son all the time. It's like, it took me a long time to realize that he was a grown man. A grown man with responsibilities, because, he's my son. And I remember, because I'm his dad, all the times that I had to fix stuff, or times that I've had to clean up stuff. But, this dude was handling it all himself. And so I would not have been a really good person for him to lean on in some of his career decisions, because I didn't really appreciate all of the diversity of his skill sets. The other part that Shannon said yesterday that I think is really important for us to anchor into is that therapists are okay with our anger, with all of our emotions. A lot of times in our personal relationships, we need to adjust our emotions or adjust our engagement so that we can maintain those relationships. Your therapist is paid specifically for you to be you. And so as you are thinking through, as you are going through your grieving process, please don't let anybody tell you how it should go, and seek some professional help, because it's hard out here. And don't think that you need to get over it in any kind of time frame that people tell you to. Oh, it's been this many years, or it's been this many months, or trivializing your loss. Because no matter whether you're a 12-year-old girl who just got broken up with after your 2-week relationship, or you're a 46-year-old man who is burying his father, those are situations that we get to grieve. And so make sure that you take your opportunity to grieve. And sometimes if you have a person in your life that's grieving, look to them for the answers. No pressure, just what is it that you need? How can I be supportive? How can I be helpful? So that was Mental Health Monday, our first Mental Health Monday on grieving and the gravity of loss. And so, next Monday, same thing. It's going to be awesome. So that's cool. Let's see, what else? Big shout out to Crystal Saez of Everyday Consulting and the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program in the Baltimore market. You want a great consultant. She is amazing. In addition to shout outs, we need to make sure we pay attention or talk about the people who make it possible for us to be here. So I tell you all often, Darker Than Blue is a place to go. Not just for great food, but for great service and a great opportunity to know that you're eating at a restaurant that supports not just Black businesses, but the Black community in general. Murphy, Falcone, and Murphy, told you all every day, Judge Murphy has been doing this and has been really managing civil rights or advocating for civil rights and for the little guy for his entire career, longer than my adult life. So if you are interested in really addressing some substantive legal issue, whether that be in an area of government influence or like lobbying or trying to get the government to do a particular thing, or if you find yourself in dealing with some civil charges and stuff like that, or you need to sue somebody, give Murphy Falcone and Murphy a call. They are great lawyers and really good people. STEM City USA. Please go visit STEM City USA. I was talking to Donnie this morning. That's one of the reasons y'all had the special edition about STEM, because Donnie just got his Oculus goggles. And so he's been really enjoying going through STEM City USA and enjoying the metaverse. So that's been really cool to hear him talk about. But more so, STEM City USA, shout out to Dr. Tyrone Taborn. They have really been not just a pioneer in the metaverse, but also they've been a pioneer in getting more Blacks in the STEM fields, particularly in engineering. They are an amazing supporter of the National Society of Black Engineers. So go ahead and check out STEM City USA. I don't even fancy enough to have my whole glasses set up, that whole rig, because the way my budget is set up, I ain't trying to be on all that. Oh yeah, Donnie's telling us the salmon prime. Oh, okay, I haven't had the cowboy prime rib. I might have to do that, but I talk about the salmon on a regular basis. So yeah, sorry, we had to go back to darker than blue. And I told you all, I am going to eat breakfast one day before this show starts. I swear I'm going to. So when I hit the darker than blue, I don't just stay on it for too long, because I get hungry. So but speaking of hunger, edible arrangements, my God. If you want, and remember, if you want to do something that makes William happy, if you want to celebrate with William, you should probably get him one of those pineapple doves covered in the white chocolate. You know what? I think I'm just going to keep saying that forever, because it's not coming. But you know what? Forget that. That's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna do this weekend. I'm gonna go treat me. I'm gonna go treat me to some edible arrangements, pineapple doves or white chocolate. But you know what? I may do it one day this week or one this weekend, because you know how the way my diabetes is set up, the whole chocolate and pineapple and a whole bunch of them probably won't go that well. But honestly, if I'm going to use some of my glucose, my insulin or whatever, yeah, it'd be a good way to use it for edible arrangements. Don't tell my endocrinologist that, though, because she really judgy when it comes to stuff about the stuff I eat. So don't tell her. Remember, this is between us. And if you find yourself with some criminal charges, it is, we all know that justice for Black people does not look like justice for a lot of other people. And what that means is that when you find yourself in situations where the law is not on your side, you need to have the warrior lawyer beside you. And we talked about nicknames. He gave himself that nickname. I mean, he didn't give himself that nickname. He earned that nickname by the work that he did in the community and the work that he does with his clients. Go to his Facebook page, J. Wendell Gordon, the Warrior Lawyer. Just go to his Facebook page and see how he helps people. And again, if you find yourself in situations, give him a call. And of course, the Grinding Gang, my company, we help small businesses navigate and scale to the next level because it's important. Running a business is hard. It is exceptionally difficult. And it's really great when you have somebody who knows what they're doing and is able to pour into you to help you develop your practice. I've been doing this for 20 years and have some really amazing people on my squad, and it can be a really great opportunity for you to really get the support you need to grow your business and your organization. And by the way, that I mentioned that our services are free. Now, not all of them, so don't come here saying, hey, I want you to write my business plan. You said it was free. No, thank you. The tools that I've created, the proprietary tools that I've created, they are free. You get to use those whenever you want to, have access to the videos and the tools and even some of the events that we do, because it's really important that we support each other and as we navigate through our experience in entrepreneurship, because again, it's hard, and anybody who knows will tell you that it is. Absolutely. Which actually is a great segue to my next guest. Monica, Dr. excuse me, Dr. Monica McCall. I know some dope people. I told y'all, my people is qualified. Um, Dr. McCall is one of those people who know what they're doing. Is one of the people who started a business from scratch with a couple of friends and 20, wait, what is it? I think it's almost 30 years now? Nah, it can't be almost 30 years. But yeah, wow, yeah, it's been almost 30 years and has grown the company from a small organization to a large entity that has cared for hundreds, if not thousands, of people living with disabilities throughout the course of her career. It is really the reason that I want to talk about dealing with disabilities and the like today is because we are transitioning, for many of us, we are transitioning into a part of life where we are now caregivers. And we are dealing with people who have been disabled for a while, like maybe a parent or a sibling who had other care, and now we are the responsible parties for their care. Or it could be that a parent is getting older and has developed disabilities, whether it be by stroke or some type of fall or traumatic episode. And we may even have children who may have a disability along maybe the autism spectrum or some physical disability that makes life challenging. And the reality is that most of us weren't taught what to do in these types of situations. I've had people who have really considered their relationship status and really anchored into whether they should be with someone or not because they had a child who was disabled or was taking care of a loved one. And it's not easy, but it's also not impossible. What I found is, especially with my friends who have had challenges and that adjustment period, a lot of that adjustment came because they weren't sure what to do. They had stories in their heads about what needs to happen and who needs to do what, instead of just dealing with the reality of the situation. The other big thing that I love about Dr. McCall is that she treats people with disabilities, okay, it's weird, like people. It's crazy, I know, but let me introduce you to her so I can stop talking. And Dr. McCall, how are you doing today?
I am just wonderful. Glad to be here. Thank you, and an honor.
I am grateful that you came by and are going to bless us with information. So, we've talked before about people with disabilities, and in the interest of disclosure, I tell you all the time, I'm not going to keep it 100 with you, but I will keep it 85. And my brother is developmentally disabled. Um, when he was born, not born, he was probably like 2 or 3, and he got a disease known as Kawasaki's disease. And some of the symptoms of Kawasaki's disease is that it fills your lungs with blood. It creates a temperature, like he had a sustained temperature of 103 for like 2 days, and this was back in like the 70s. All the medical technology we got now, cooling tubs, that wasn't it. It like literally, the or the grocery store with buckets of, not the what do you call that place? The cafeteria with buckets of ice, putting him on his bed. And I was like 5 or 6, and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening to my little brother. But because of the lack of oxygen from the flooding of his lungs, and the temperature, it messed up some of the synapses in his brain, and so he operates at max at about a first or second grade level. And while we use that as an academic marker, I think a lot of times we forget about the sociological marker that comes along with the second grade. So this 45-year-old man, you know, is asking questions that, it's like, dude, and having to remember some of that. And so it is challenging, understanding what to do. And so one of the things I loved about your approach is the focus on people with disabilities as people, because until I talked to you and some of your staff and some of my other friends, I hadn't realized that I had fallen into that trap as well. He was my brother. He's just slow and just disregarding. So I'm sorry, I'm just excited, and because this is, this is a very important and meaningful personal topic for me. So I'm just excited to be able to share this with other people. So let me stop talking because I apparently I didn't know I had this much to say about it. I'm still talking, Jesus. So, but tell us first. Let's tell us about you. Let's start there, because I keep forgetting this is they don't know you. They have not talked to you before. Okay, I apologize. Introduce yourself to my audience.
Well, I'm Dr. Monica McCall. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
I am the founder and president and chief executive officer of Creative Options Inc., which is a nonprofit organization that operates in the state of Maryland. And as you said, 1992, so 30 years of operation.
Wow.
In Creative Options from its inception to where it is today. We employ over 400 employees across the state of Maryland in what's called the Central Region, which is in Howard County, Baltimore City, and a few in Harford County as well. And we provide services for people with developmental disabilities. People who may have just some differing abilities. That's really how not my phrase, but certainly a phrase that a colleague uses quite a bit that I absolutely love, because they have all kinds of abilities. And too often we focus on their disability. And too often people say, well, what do you call them? Your clients, your folks you support, your people. I call them people. They're people whom I know. This is so and so. Just like I would introduce you, I would introduce them in the same way. I have always been a person who's had a great curiosity of life. So the curiosity of what people know, and people say to me, "How did you know that they knew how to do that?" Well, I simply asked them. How'd you figure out this? Well, I did what I normally do, which I may ask the question, I may see what people can do. So it's, to me, it's like any other person. And diversity is real. There's different people, and people do different things. People have different skills. People learn differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just have the patience to ask people questions and just wait for them to answer it. It really, I don't know how, where the difficulty lies with that when it comes to me. I know others have challenges with that, but I see people as people. And if they have additional needs, that's okay.
But I think one of the, kind of reflecting on my experience, and because honestly, when I started understanding how even through my being a loving brother, I was actually discriminating or institutionalizing that type of basically discrimination against them, because there was a story in my head about who he is and what his capabilities were. And it made it easier for me to say, okay, I don't have to worry about talking to him about this. Quick story, and I'll use my brother as an example of this throughout, because I think it's, I don't ask people to do something that I'm not willing to do. So if I'm not willing to talk about me and my situation, why ask anybody else to do it? But one of the things recently, he came to my mom's house for the Christmas break, and was only supposed to be there for like a week. But they had a COVID exposure, and both of them tested negative, but they had an exposure. And since he lives in a group home with people who are medically fragile, they were like, hey, we can't even have him back. Cool, no problem. But what it did is that, how when you go someplace, you're prepared to stay for a certain amount of time, even mentally. Like, I know we think about packing, but mentally we're prepared to stay for a certain time, and we're prepared to deal with a person for a certain amount of time. Well, the time she had been prepared to deal with him was over. So now there's all this, well, I don't have anything planned for this part. So she started talking to him.
Okay.
And she was amazed that his ability, his understanding of, now, unfortunately, it is not a great topic, but the entire January 6th Trump thing, like his understanding of the intricate details of it and how things go back and forth is amazing. And I was like, you didn't know that? She's like, no, because for her, when he would start talking about it, he was just quoting a headline he'd heard. Not that and also we started realizing how it was impacting him. Like, my brother, who thinks at a second grade level, is terrified for democracy.
Absolutely.
as he should be.
Uh-huh.
But it is that thing. But because and he also started a YouTube channel. So he's getting it up and doing stuff like that. And I'm also we're gonna try to get him in the metaverse. That's a project I want to talk to you about
There
offline.
you go. All right. That was
But the idea was that we had I had stereotyped who he was. I had created a story in my head about the extent of his capabilities, what he wanted, and stuff like that. And I had made those decisions for a grown person who just has different needs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what is it sounds easy when you say just treat them like people, but let's talk about some of the things that people think about people with disabilities,
Yeah.
and the ones that are true and the ones aren't. So, what are the main things that you hear when people talk? Oh, you work with those people.
Yeah. Well,
what are some of the questions you get?
the first thing I hear is, "Oh, that is so sweet of you. God has blessed you with such a wonderful career." Well, this it's not a merciful job, number one. So people often say that, and I say, no, actually, I am blessed, and I'm blessed to experience people whom others have just kind of cast away and
Mm,
given the time to really explore who they are. And just like your experience, people are often very surprised when they just take time to talk to people. They just take time to engage with them and better understand what's going on. We get concerns. We operate what's determined to be a group home. I just call it a home for people who live there, and we provide staffing supports in those homes. And neighbors will say, "How many of those people do you have there?"
mm,
I'm very sensitive to language, and
hmm
but I've also gotten to a point in my life where, and for a long time, I correct people, and not only correct them, but I help them experience life with people with disabilities so that they see things differently.
right.
Neighbors will call and they'll complain. You say you only have 3 people in a house, but I see all these people coming in. And I explain, yeah, they're the staff that support them, and different people have different support needs. Well, how are they taking care of them? I love the word care, but at the same time, people's vision of what care is and what we do, and I definitely got to give a shout out to my direct support professionals because they are awesome, and they do some wonderful things with folks to help support them in the life that they desire. My very first trip to Rosewood Center, I was in high school. And
We have some people who are not from Maryland. Tell them what Rosewood is.
Rosewood Center was the last state facility that closed in Maryland that housed people with developmental disabilities, and hundreds of people. Uh,
Hmm
and back in the 80s, there began an effort to move people out of these state hospitals and put them in homes. And I had the pleasure of growing up in West Baltimore, and my neighbor has a son with cerebral palsy, and I've
hmm
known him all my life. Well, she also became a special educator, so
hmm
she was one of my mentors, and asked me one day, did I want to go to Rosewood Center because she had to do an assignment. And the first person I encountered said, "Hey, are you coming to take me home with you?" And I
Wow.
paused. I like, wait a minute, I thought you said people lived here.
Uh-huh.
And so when I walked into Rosewood, I understood. I wouldn't have claimed it as home either. There's a reason why that facility no longer exists, as well as people's lives were so limited as to what
Yes.
they can and cannot do. And here's my thing, it's a civil rights issue for me. Who do we think we are that we get to determine what people do, what they I mean, and simple
Man, listen.
wear, what they can't wear, what they eat for dinner, what they can't eat, where they can go, and places like that. So I knew very early off in my um, life that, one, I knew I would do special education, but then when
Mhm.
I had that experience, I knew that it was going to be my life to support people in a life that is of their own. I changed the word help. Help is support. It's not telling
Right.
people what to do. There's this the hair on the back of my head when you start telling people what to do, what to wear, and people say, "Well, they can't make those decisions." I don't. I'm a
let's
firm believer.
let's dig into that part right there,
Okay.
because that is a very real concern and consideration for a lot of people. And I'll again talk about myself. I'm not trying to put nobody else's business out. Because of all of what I had been taught and trained what disability was, and special education, and using the hyperbolic examples of kids who, or people who can't move and nonverbal, and using those as illustrative of the larger population. It's the same thing that has happened with for the price of a cup of coffee a day, you can support a starving child in Africa. And we had a guest on a few weeks ago who had gone to Ghana, and everybody was like, "Did you see lions and tigers?" But some of it is about deconstructing a lot of these myths, and also recognizing that a lot of what we, let's be clear, I don't make good decisions. I look at my life and it's like, "Oh, bruh, there's some things that you've done incorrectly." I just asked everybody to buy me pineapple doves with white chocolate on it as a diabetic. Like, so clearly, good decision making is not a predicate for independent living. And so how do we find ourselves in this position where we're talking to people with disabilities like they're animals, like we're training them for rote tasks, as opposed to helping them, or giving them the context where they can experience humanity?
Yeah, exactly. And just like you made that shift from letting them to helping them, that's the shift as a society we really have to make.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't this allowance or permission. They have the same allowance and permission as any of us. And granted, we've come a long way. There's been many tools developed to help support the industry of developmental disabilities, and people that there's person-centered planning, and where the person is in the center of all the plans of their life. I push the envelope on that a bit, and I talk a lot about being person authored, like not just creating.
Talk a little bit more about the person author, because I want to spend some time on that. When you told me about that, like when we went through my brother's next IEP meeting or IP meeting, I was like, we should have him. Joe, what do you think? What do you want to do? Wait a minute, he's not finished talking yet. Yes. I was so proud of myself, but it is that idea of client author. So spend some time on that.
Oh, absolutely. The concepts of person-centered is great. It's developing the world using whatever resources and support that the person needs to help them live their life the way they choose to live it. I think sometimes where we fall short is that we are identifying what those things are, as opposed to allowing people to identify them themselves. You have to have that belief that people are capable and competent to make decisions about their lives. So it's a natural belief, and it doesn't mean that we don't expose people to things that they've not been exposed to.
Absolutely.
Can you do this? No, I can't do that. Well, how do you know you can't do that? Have you ever tried? Would you like to experience it? And just really putting things in place so that people can have various experiences, so that they can, just like you and I. I mean, we know what foods we like by trying foods. If we try something that's nasty or not pleasing to us, we're not going to try that again. And we have the experience of saying, that's not something I like. But what I do like is salmon. If you make salmon for me, I'm going to be happy. Just giving people those opportunities, I think, is really like my life goal.
So I think some of the challenge is also that people don't believe that they know. Let's look at it differently. I don't think a lot of people recognize the privilege of their ability. And with my brother, it's one of those things that I have had to figure out, but I struggle with, because I'm like, I got it rough. But I also realized, I was talking to my mom, and there are a couple. The people he sees are his staff and his 3 roommates. And I was talking to her about I was like, wow, I've been in therapy, and this whole COVID thing has been horrible on me. And I have people to talk to. I have friends. I get to go places and things like that. I was like, who does he have?
Who does he have?
And it was this idea, because I realized I hadn't thought about him as a real person. I thought I had, and I am not proud of this. I'm happy that I've learned differently, but like, it's embarrassing to think that, like, wait a minute, I've not thought about and when I think about his relationships, like, and this is another one, like, what that looks like, because the girl he had a girlfriend who had, I think she was developmentally delayed as well. So they were about the same mental age. And so they were going together, and then she found somebody else that she liked. So she stopped going with him to go with the guy. And then they stopped going together. So she called, like, my mom was like, hey, can I speak to Joseph? He was like, what's going on? She was like, yeah, I just want to see if he wants to be my boyfriend. She was like, I thought you had a boyfriend. She was like, well, yeah, but I broke up with him. So now I want to come back to Joseph. And my mother was offended. She was like, how dare you? And I was like, yo, are we gonna beat this chick up because she's honest? Because she's not playing the game like, oh, I just realized how important he was. Because that's basically what she's saying, is just that it comes off. We are penalizing her for not playing the game. She broke up with my brother because she found somebody different. I got to be honest, I've not always done that. If we're gonna talk about something,
that's right.
And so the idea that they are not able to navigate these relationships themselves, and honestly, I don't know what I would do if somebody told me that, hey, you can't be in a relationship, or you can't date anybody, or I'd be like, I'm sorry. So tell me, how many teeth do you want to miss? Just because I want to count them appropriately.
I feel that, and it all comes from a good place. I mean,
absolutely.
I think that we want to protect. We want to protect him from having a broken heart. I don't. I've had a broken heart before. I got past it, but it's real life. And in our efforts to protect people, we inadvertently limit their experiences in life. And thus we limit their opportunity to grow. I mean, it really does take away their opportunity to grow. And I'll be completely honest, when I think about some of the decisions I even made as an executive director, opening up an organization, knowing that so many people were coming out of state institutions and other places, some were coming from family members. I think of, my peanut butter story. I tell my staff.
Oh, yeah. I love that story. Tell me about it.
My peanut butter story, it comes from a place to protect. And I worked at an organization where, unfortunately, there was a situation where a gentleman choked. He was eating happened to be a peanut butter sandwich. And he experienced a choking episode and ultimately passed away as a result of that. And there's lots of literature that people with developmental disabilities sometimes have some swallowing issues, dysphagia that is not as evident and known. So anyway, as a new exec, my first decision, day one, no peanut butter. There will be no peanut butter in any of my houses. That people will not have peanut butter, and we are going to protect people and help them be safe. Until one of Mr. Jones came walking into my office and he said, I'm a grown-ass man. I'm a grown man. And I want peanut butter. I love peanut butter. What do you mean I can't have peanut butter? What do you mean you're telling me? Your staff telling me I can't buy peanut butter? And I said, but wait a minute, Mr. Charles, people have choked. I'm giving him my literature. And they're really having a hard time. The state of Maryland's doing all this training around this issue to help our staff. What are you going to do if you're eating something? He says, well, I'll just drink Kool-Aid. I'll have milk with it. I'll do this. And he gave me this whole list of things that he could do to help keep himself safe.
Right.
So you think he didn't think about that? You think his critical thinking skills weren't operating to help him design a plan for him to eat peanut butter? It's sad that he would have to do that.
Right.
But nonetheless, so that taught me very early on, like, oh, wow, in my efforts to protect him, I'm really taking away his ability to make decisions about what he wants in his life.
Right.
Opportunities that certainly he could have. And who am I? Who do I think that's where I went? Who in the world do I think I am to tell him that he cannot have peanut butter? If somebody told me I couldn't have something that
Right.
I enjoy, I'm going to have the same reaction. So
But
that really changed a way of thinking for me. And it opened up that opportunity to not just for myself, but
mhm.
it was my goal to make certain that everybody I encountered understood that people can make decisions about their life, that people are competent, that if there's more than just one answer to any challenge, then I can ask questions of them
Yes.
and support the decisions that they make. Now, do people make decisions that I wouldn't make? Of course they do. Of course they do. I mean, I have some folks that have gotten very independent. They've learned a number of skills, and the first thing they said is, "I'm ready to move out on my own." Now, inside, I'm going, "Oh my God."
Right.
Do what? Move out
It's
on
like
your
you
own?
remember when you were cooking and you left the pan on a week ago? So I'm not,
Absolutely.
but guess what? I do the same damn thing, and this is the so let's okay, because we talk about some real stuff here.
That's
We about
right.
to do it. Are you ready, Monica?
I'm
Because
ready.
I
I'm
don't know, because I don't know if they're ready for the other parts of our conversation.
okay. Go right ahead. I'm ready.
Because the reality is that I was as bad as a good ally. I was as bad as the white supremacy. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They need my help. They need to be fixed. I need to come in and save him. Oh, why should we? And like one of the comments that you made, you said they asked you, how did you figure out how to help them? Like, they are puzzles to be fixed. That is the same thing that the majority community says about Black people. Well, what is the problem in Baltimore? What are they doing? What do
Yes.
we need to arrest them? We need to control them more.
Mhm.
And when we argue and push back that controlling our communities does not give us the experience to lead our communities,
Does
I
not.
need us to look in the mirror and say that same shit to ourselves when we're talking about people with disabilities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is no difference. And that's been the battle, that's been the fight. You know, I get the opportunity to meet with legislators and folks who are making decisions about funding and programs similar to organizations similar to Creative Options. And
Mhm.
that's what I do. I humanize the population of people. You know, sir, this is a constituent in your community. And when they're not listening, I talk to them about the number of constituents in within their communities. And if you represent this district, this is
You
where I
represent them.
and this is where five people, you know, four or five people and their staff who may also be from your community and they have jobs and employment, and this is an economic factor as well. And as well, the people in the community also shop, you know, no different than you and I. So when I can bring it to that level, that's when I can get a legislator to say, ah, okay, that makes sense to me. You're right. They're using the grocery store that I use. They're using like, of course they are. But
The,
you
the,
really have to bring that to light in order for them to see the lives of the people that they too are expected to represent.
I honestly think, we need to go and spend some more time on this whole using white supremacy as an allegory or a metaphor for privilege supremacy, because
Mm,
that's what it comes. And again, just like I believe a lot of people who are who behave racistly, some of
yeah,
them are well-meaning because
well,
they're just trying to help. Like the teachers, when integration happened, well, they don't learn as much. They haven't had as much instruction, so don't give them the same test.
don't give them the same.
Misogyny in basic training is like, oh, give the women a different obstacle course because they can't do it. It becomes, this is the privilege. This is what we are talking about. What this is what is happening is we are the privilege, and we don't recognize it because we don't have privilege everywhere else.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
the idea is the privilege of being able to determine when I get to go outside is something that my brother does not have.
See, that's what I'm talking about. And even when I'm supporting the leadership in the company, it's also supporting the staff members to understand what their role is. And their role as leaders is not to take over and make decisions for folks. I have folks that my staff have to feed. And they better ask them what they want next. Because I hope and pray that I'm never in a position where I'm going to have to require someone to feed me. But if I am, I hope and pray that I encounter people
Absolutely.
that would say, "Hey, do you want your mashed potatoes? You want your corn mixed in your mashed potatoes?"
Or for me, they can say, "Hey, can I get you some salmon for darker than blue, or pineapple with white chocolate from Edible Arrangement?" You see how I love my sponsors, that because they feed me well too.
They feed you well.
All right,
Absolutely.
so it's time to talk about something that we're gonna make people uncomfortable right now. Again, but if they didn't want to be uncomfortable, they shouldn't listen. I'm just gonna be honest about that part.
Okay.
Sex.
Yeah.
Um, it is uncomfortable for a lot of people to think about other people having sex in general. Sex is one of the most sex and education are some of the most divisive and cliquish kind of topics around. And there are a lot of people who are concerned, rightfully so, that people with developmental disabilities may be taken advantage of and exploited for sexual activity. But on the other side, they are people and people like sex. So like,
Correct.
And for some of us who may be ending up in a situation where we may become primary caregivers, like honestly, whether it's my brother or and I realize that this is also part of the problem, I would have the same rules for my brother or my son in my house about having sex. Except that my brother is also not my son. And so that's, again, another thing that I'm struggling with, and also struggling with the fact that my sons are grown and men, blah, blah, words. That's a separate.
Exactly.
That's another show that I'm going to have to I might have to have that on Mental Health Monday, where she can just help me work through it all. But like this idea, so again, you have this protective and the whole, well, hell, I know I've had sex with people and it broke my heart and it makes my mind bad and da da da. And so again, how would you advise somebody to even bring up the topic or to engage with somebody who has developmental or has disabilities living in a particular space about sex?
Yeah. Well, oftentimes that the issue is not the person; it's usually the person asking about it.
Oh,
It's really
okay.
about them and their comfort level and what's going on with them. So that's first and foremost. But secondly, it again, human beings. This is a human life. This is people, and we support people. What do you need around this topic of sex? How can I support you? What else can I do to help you understand better? What do you know about it? I mean, I have that conversation for a period of time there. For some reason, we ended up with a number of young men, 20. Oh, they were turning, you come into the Developmental Disabilities Administration, which is state mental health program, at age 21. And I also support youth under 15 and under. So a lot of young men, they're all aging around the same time. They hit 21, they transitioned to our adult services because they didn't want to leave. Some of them we were trying to encourage them to do some other things,
Right.
But no, they stayed. And then we realized we had a group of young men, maybe about 10 to 12, between the age of 21 to 25. Okay. And whom also have a developmental disability. So cognitively for some, somebody
Right.
would say around 17, 18, 19, perhaps. And nonetheless, what was on their mind? Girls, dating, going out,
Sex.
having sex. And, people are like, oh, well, we need to add services here. We need a sex therapist. I ain't a sex therapist for someone having sex. The thought of it. And then I looked at the guys. Oh, I kid you not. We need a therapist that can help educate. And do you know?
They were trying to get us like sex was such a complicated concept that they thought they needed to bring a therapist in to help them navigate and understand this process. But again, that goes back to the privilege. Like, because honestly, I would laugh at you if you told me I needed to. And honestly, in retrospect, after being in therapy, I probably should have done that. I probably really should have done that then. But I would have laughed at you telling me I needed some therapy and talk to a sexual therapist before I go to the club. Come on, stop playing. I got a date.
Yeah, that's right. And when people decide that they're going to engage in things like masturbation and things like that, no, we're not going to go get a sex therapist. You know what I did? I for this one gentleman, I called one of the directors and I said, hey, you have young men. What'd you do with your son? And he said, "Oh, great. You're it. Tag, you're it. You go, you
Right.
go and provide him with that same information, that same support, and that same conversation." And if we take it out of the realm of people are so different and we have this superiority over them, so therefore we should be telling them what to do, we should be explaining to, and trust me, the same um concerns and the same issues with my daughter
Yep.
are no different than the other women in the program. So providing education, providing her, if she didn't want to listen to me, then I got other people that she would
Come and
listen.
talk. Yep.
And it was no different for them. So, I think that in the world there's a need to really look at how we lead. Number one, that leadership term is not just a description.
Right. There's not a bunch of roles. It's
And
not
it's
about the
not
roles.
about
But
the
what you
role. I
do.
mean, and one of the things we've learned clearly, I mean, Creative Options has been my laboratory for leadership, because we flatlined leadership and said everybody's a leader. Everybody's a leader, and everyone, is going to look at, first of all, being flexible,
Yes.
engaging with people, and we teach them how to engage with people in a way. Because the first thing you do, first of all, people come into this industry and you wonder, what have they experienced? Because they come in trying to be the saviors,
Right.
people that don't need to be saved.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really getting them to see right when they come in the door that you're working with people, and people have a life. They have the same joys. One lady said, she wanted to go to church. The staff said, "Oh, she can go to my church." "Why should she go to your church?" She's
What?
going to
Right.
church for years. When she said Pastor Dante Hickman, I knew exactly where she'd been, where she grew up, and where she was going to go. So it oftentimes it's really, we're constantly working with staff, we work with neighbors, we work with families, all the stakeholders in the game, and really recognize that when things go on, we don't have to have this great big $50 million meeting to discuss a gentleman who wanted to take the train to go Midwest to visit his sister. And then he turned and looked at me in his meeting and he said, he's staring at me and he says, "And Dad, I don't want you to go with me." And I'm looking at him like, "Why are you looking at me when you say that?"
Because he's like, she gonna have my back.
He knew that I would have his back. And Dad said, you can't go all the way to Missouri by yourself. And he said, "Well, why not? I can get the train. I can do this. I can do that." And he says, "Well, wait a minute. You have to do your finger sticks." He said, "I've been watching staff do finger sticks for years." Oh my goodness. I had tears in my eyes to see him, first of all, to be empowered, to really stand up for himself against his dad, nonetheless.
Right.
And,
Right.
and, and excited to go visit his sister there, but wanting to do it on his own. I can tell you that every year this man has made his own plans. He's called the train. "Well, what if you get off the train and you go the wrong way?" He said, "There's these guys with these stripes." I mean, he's telling us this.
But the funny part is, like, that's a real, like, I've done that. Like, I like, but we assume that because it's so funny, the stuff, because they do it, it's so horrible. It's kind of like, and again, using the racial metaphor, where that article came out and said white women said smoking marijuana makes them better mothers, and it's like, it might make better black men better fathers, but many of them are in jail for it.
Right.
And it's, again, it is we have now an opioid epidemic instead of heroin with junkies. Like, and it becomes this thing that as the dominant society recognizes the kind of subculture, that it changes the narrative and changes the engagement. And again, talking about sex is this idea that if I acknowledge that you have sexual desires, same as me, then now again, I have to acknowledge your humanity. Because especially if I'm not clear about my sexual desires and that is not work well in my life, oh, I don't want you to go through that because I remember when. And now I am forcing you to live your life in the context of my story.
Yes, absolutely. And do we have horrid stories about people who have taken advantage of folks? Absolutely. But we have those in anyway. There how many stories, how many scams, how many things have happened to And
I'm sorry. How come the Nigerian prince is still getting people without disabilities?
right, right.
And like again, literally the same Nigerian prince that has been around since the beginning of the internet is
Yeah,
still collecting money.
absolutely.
And so we hold, and again, watch this. We talk about the people with disabilities. We live in a society where 300 people went to Dallas last year.
Right.
They paid their way. They made arrangements to go to Daily Plaza to watch JFK and JFK Jr. prove their fake deaths. And we're worried about who's sleeping with who in your house. How much peanut butter they're eating in your house.
How much peanut butter, right? Yeah.
But guess what? Those people have jobs. Those people get to literally they made their own arrangements to go here. And I would argue,
right? They made a decision and I may not agree with their decision. I have to hold my thoughts and my judgments lightly. Not easy. Not saying that's easy because we live in.
I don't hold mine. That's why I got a show so I can say stuff about people.
Okay, that I believe. Yeah.
But again, we give them the privilege that if I met one of them, and again, not proud of this. I realized not knowing they went down to Daily Plaza. Now, if I know that about you now, it's like I'm not going to probably meet you. But if I had met them, I realized that I would have given them more engagement off the break than I would have my brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't have the story in my head about them that I have about him. I remember, and again, this is why we talk about bringing professionals in, because one of the things we also don't realize a lot of times is that we are the impediment in their lives. Going back to my brother's girlfriend, kind of closing the loop on that.
Yeah.
When she called, and my mother was like, no, she broke his heart and again, the men in my family don't handle emotional upheaval well.
Okay.
So like he couldn't work. Like he was at work on the phone, like distracted. So, and in our economy, everything is about work anyway, and your value is about work, like a separate issue. Mm-hmm. But so, my mother was like, it was so disruptive, and this and that, and this and that, and I was like, yo, do you remember the year I got divorced? Like 2000? Do you remember? So like. What do you want to do to help me? Because I could have used a little bit of that support a while ago. But it is that it's like you are trying to protect him from a natural part of life. Absolutely. And what it was is I realized that it was more about she didn't want to see him hurting again, because that's rough. Like I've seen my kids go through some stuff, and I'm like, and trying to be grown about it, but like, ooh, just I dare you to say, hey, Dad, I need some help. I dare you to say that. Because I'm wilding all the way out.
But I'm going to plan it out for you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that we create these stories in our head. And sometimes we need to work with people in professional organizations to check us.
Give us
to let us know, like, oh, having, and one of the things, because I don't spend a lot of time with my mother and enough time with my brother, like when I see their interactions, and especially after talking to you and doing some more research and stuff, I'm able to be like, hey, wait a minute, like, you might want to think about this. And so part of it is not just trying to resolve things and learn yourself, but also advocating, but knowing when you don't know enough shit to say something. Right. Know when you need to say, hey, here's an article from somebody you might want to call or blah, 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 because I don't know enough to advise you. And I might tell you something I think is wrong in the best of intentions. Just like the teacher who said, those kids, they have issues and they need help.
Right. Well, it happens to us, as family members. It really throws a lot of my parents off, and I say my parents, but the parents off. Right. The parents come in and they're presenting, their person. They want them for admission, and they want to tell you all the horrible things that happen in their lives, and it's important that we know that.
Sets the context.
It really throws them off when I say, "Tell me something wonderful about your son." Tell me about a wonderful experience that he's had in his life. Describe that for me. What was that like? And so it really gets them to also think about their loved one differently.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear I've had some parents that says, I hear you guys are the best. You know what our secret sauce is? We treat people like human beings.
There it is.
So we recognize people have challenges, and some do, some don't, but not all. And when people say, oh, well, they've always done this, and they come within our environment and they may not experience, they may experience some other things, but not that.
Right.
And they'll say, oh, your staff are wonderful. Well, they are, because they're looking at people as people. And not the man who broke the window, or not
Right.
the,
Right.
not the one the police had to come get because he was out of control. And those things do exist.
Mhm.
Some people, not all, but some people, with a very small number of people actually with disabilities, they have some behavioral challenges.
Yeah.
Society would have you believe that every person with a disability has behavior out of control, and they're extremely strong. Just some of these absurdities, right? You've heard them. You've heard them. Yeah, some of these things are just absurd.
They get crazy stress.
Right. That's right. And people with disabilities, like anyone else in society, have mental illness. That's sort of our niche, is the people with chronic mental illness who also have a developmental disability. When
Right.
I started 30 years ago, people were still challenging us about whether they had chronic mental illness or not.
Right. Yeah. Because back then, mental illness meant that you were broken. There was something wrong with you.
You already had a disability, so you don't have mental illness. You can't be depressed.
Right.
You can't have schizophrenia.
Have you heard this one? Well, I don't know if they're even smart enough to be depressed. They don't really understand what's going on.
Absolutely have heard it. Absolutely. And
no, they don't really get that. It's not, they don't understand.
Yeah. They'll not benefit from therapy. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? So when I see people excelling in life, and I see the people we support excelling in life, those that do very well are the ones who are able to live their lives, and they can make mistakes. It happens.
Right.
I tell them that happened yesterday. I don't know that we need to talk about that today. Let's move on and see what today is going to be about.
So, and I think one of the things that, again, we try to anchor in here is that in dealing with all of this, a lot of us have to start with, hey, our mental health.
Yes. Start with
because some of the issue is us.
Yes.
Like I realized that part of the reason that I saw my brother the way I did is because I saw all of life compartmentalized.
Yes.
I saw everything had a role. Everybody had a role. And as I start deconstructing that so that I could be healthier and engaging people, I realized, like, not only had he had a container, but like everybody else's had a window on it. His had a door with a board over top of it. Couldn't see in it. I peek in every once in a while, like, hey, you good? All right, cool.
Right.
And meaning nothing by it. Actually, in my head, I had convinced myself I was helping because I don't need to, talk to him like that because it frustrates me, and I don't need him to have my negative energy. And it was always about me.
Yeah.
And I just projected it onto him.
Really is.
And I think as we start, especially for some of us who are going to be transitioning into the place where our parents are going to being disabled.
Unbelievable.
And so let me just tell you all right now, if any of you it may be a situation where you end up becoming a caregiver for a parent, go to therapy before it happens. And again, not saying like, it's going to be crazy or whatever, but one of the big things for me was that it was an entire realignment of the view of my life. Because the lady I always could count, well, one, my father had died. And the lady I had always counted on to handle stuff, she was looking at me because we didn't realize that my father had managed most of the stuff.
Right.
So it was like, I'm grieving. And I have, by the way, a whole host of issues of my own. And now there's this role I need to step into in a caregiver with an independent person.
Yep.
And not just an independent person who's been doing most of what she wanted for the last 50 years, literally gave birth to me. Yeah. And now it is, hey, that's not a good idea. Or the day I realized that, she couldn't climb on a ladder anymore. Like it was disorienting. It was like,
right.
And it was also disorienting for her because she realized, like, if she fell off the little step stool ladder, not like a step,
right.
She's like, that might be terminal. And and we just had to sit with that. And so again, this is a life change. And let's be clear, having someone with disabilities in your life, depending on how you're set up, like we talked about yesterday, it could be traumatic. because you may have a story in your head about how things are going to go. And this person is a disruption to that story. And depending on how tight you were to that story, this could be a direct trauma in your life. If you had an idea that you want to have a kid that did this and your kid is born with autism or blood, that might be traumatic for you.
Right.
One, don't let anybody tell you that you're a bad person because of it. So let's just start there.
Absolutely.
Two, talk to somebody about it. Talk to somebody about how to process through it, because those are very real feelings. And they're not going to go away. Trust me on this one. They're not going to go anywhere. So, Monica, if somebody needs to get in contact with you, if they're sitting there going like, yo, I have somebody that may need some support, or I have somebody, I just need to know more about this, where can they come and talk to you, or where should they go? I know you rep a whole lot of organizations, so you know, we could just run down a Rolodex, just pull out your Rolodex and press play and see what happens. But how can they get in contact with you?
Well, if there's an email, Dr. McCall, DOCTOR, McCall, McCall at Yahoo. That's Dr. McCall at yahoo.com. As an email address, feel free, send it to me. I will respond. I will provide whatever support I can, and we will go from there.
Okay, I'm trying to make sure. I'm gonna see if I can get it up here.
Oh, okay.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Sweet.
Correct. You did great.
So if you all want to, so it's also on the Facebook link as well. So if you all need to contact her, go ahead and get that in and get it done and get it run.
Absolutely.
Oh, Brandy had another question. You know what? I want you to come back and talk to us, because I really want to, because I know because it's my show and I get to say what I want. We focused a lot on people with developmental disabilities, and particularly older people. But you did mention youth, and that is, I have a lot of friends and a lot of audience members who you see Michael comment.
Yes, it is. I've had that for a very long time, and yeah, even before I became Dr. McCall, it was.
So I had
Yahoo.
I still got my AOL account, so I ain't gonna, I'm not gonna throw no shade on you. So I still got the AOL account, but like I was saying, it is a very big difference. And even as I'm thinking back, what we should have done when he was younger versus how we engage with him now. And so I want to, because that balancing the perspective of parent and natural protector, like you are naturally designed to protect this vulnerable person, but at the same time trying to help. And so I'm sorry, I love videos about cats, and especially the ones that have like disabilities or whatever. And what you end up finding is that, and again, they behave like other cats. Like if I had seen like this one had paralyzed legs, and I'd have been like, oh, we just have to carry it everywhere, and we can't let it go, and it can't be outside. They put a diaper on that cat, and that cat climbs and jumps and stuff because it didn't know it couldn't.
You're right. Exactly.
If it was my cat, I would have been an impediment. And so I want to, because I'm supposed to protect it and save it. And so I want you to come back and talk about, like, when we're dealing with youth and young people who have disabilities, how do we as caregivers, as adults, how do we get beyond ourselves so that we can treat them? Because we have a separate issue, because kids aren't human.
That's right.
People with disabilities aren't human. So they're like not human squared. Yeah. And so, yeah. Oh my God, boy! I love the show.
It's a whole life spectrum,
right? And I think we should really spend some more time talking about that, because they're people. Crazy.
Surprise!
All right, Dr. McCall. Until we get an opportunity to hang out and talk to you again next time, thank you so much, and thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a great one.
You too.
Bye. Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we did it again. We got to the end. We're even overtime right now. That's how great that conversation was. We were getting it and getting in. Big thank you to Dr. Monica McCall. Oh, and big shout out to Mom Hana Blue and my brother Joey for being part of my story and part of my life. All right, we will see you guys tomorrow at the same Black channel, same Black time.